There's actually lots of manufacturing jobs that are being made here in the US. They're just not assembly jobs. They are data analysis jobs, engineering jobs. I definitely think there are compelling cases where you can build highly complex products here in the US. It's usually at much lower volumes. It's not 1 million a day. Smaller companies are often deciding to build locally.
So, what will it take to bring phone manufacturing to the US?
Not only you will need to rebuild the human infrastructure, you also need the components to be made nearby. Somewhere in the ecosystem needs to be there.
America doesn't have this ecosystem here, right? Because we have not been manufacturing phones for years, right? And so the supply chain doesn't exist here in the US. They are in Asia, right? In China, in Vietnam, in other countries. So to rebuild those things will take time and take a cost, very expensive. It doesn't make any sense.
But in light of recent support from the U.S. government to transform the American manufacturing ecosystem, the U.S. is taking steps to restore some manufacturing jobs. In August 2022, President Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act. The bipartisan bill includes $52 billion to U.S.-based companies to produce semiconductors, with $39 billion in manufacturing incentives.
America finally is making policy at the federal, state, and local level to level the playing field. Beforehand, it was just difficult because regulations and red tapes were plenty, taxes were high, and cost was very high.
I would say it would be very challenging to build a complex electronic device like a phone here in the US. It's absolutely can be profitable to build products here in the US, but it's got to be the right product and have the right technology support around that product.
In 2017, the White House announced Foxconn's plan to open a massive LCD screen manufacturing facility in Wisconsin.
I led the Project Flying Eagle, which was slated to invest up to $10 billion in creating 13,000 jobs in the state of Wisconsin.
But Foxconn has massively scaled back on that promise. In 2021, the company anticipated creating less than 1,500 of the initial 13,000 jobs promised and cut its investments to $672 million.
Foxconn bit off more than it could chew at that particular stage of their history, dealing with everything from the regulatory side, the environmental side, the actual buildings of the facilities, and then even possibly getting the right kind of people needed to do it. That was just not reality in the short time frame they promised.
Two key elements that actually affect the project were the market condition and also the investment climate. In our case, for LCD manufacturing, the prices dropped and got cut by half. And if you ask manufacturers, would they still build a project or build a factory if the end products now sold 50% off? I think they have to pause and really take a long, hard look strategically to do that.
But if the world's largest electronic manufacturer couldn't succeed in Wisconsin with LCD screens, and if Motorola failed at making phones in the country after only a year, it seems highly unlikely that we will see any other attempts to make smartphones in the US anytime soon.
I can't comment on whether Apple asked Foxconn to manufacture iPhone in the United States, but I'm sure when the clients of Foxconn asked the company to consider manufacturing a particular product in the United States, the company will be ready.
As to why it's necessary to build phones in the US, Purism's president Kyle Rankin says it's largely due to security concerns and data protection.
At Purism, we think data is uranium. So we treat it like a radioactive substance where we collect as little of it as humanly possible. Manufacturing things in the USA avoids risk from some other government or overseas or something tampering with it. Every extra link you add to the supply chain is an extra opportunity for someone to inject themselves in that supply chain and tamper with things.
If China continues to be a security threat, more and more of the US companies and the international companies are going to move manufacturing outside of China. And we're already seeing that happen.
But Professor Chen says it's really not necessary.
We eat strawberry, we eat tomatoes, but we don't grow tomatoes, we don't grow strawberry. It's the same thing. We can consume iPhone or any smartphone without manufacturing the smartphone. These phones can be manufactured in Vietnam, in China, in different other countries.
Regardless of where it happens, the need for manufacturing phones is only going to grow.
other companies, they continue to fall back on it's just too hard to do in the United States as almost a talking point as opposed to actually looking into how it would be able to get done. It can clearly get done and there's a huge market opportunity. And it's just cheaper for those companies to offshore those jobs and continue to import from other countries.
There is a reason why those companies manufacture product in China. By combining the labor costs and the supply chain and the productivity, China is still the most efficient place to produce.
Whether a phone or TV or computer should be made in the US is going to be up to the companies, meaning the supply chain, including Foxconn and the clients, to decide. But ultimately, it's the end-use customers who's going to decide. And the customer is going to decide when go to the shop or go online and make the purchase and make the decision with their credit cards.
So while, yes, you can find an OG flip phone, some of the relics on eBay, we're seeing companies develop new models too.
Flip phones are hot right now.
Flip phone.
While it might seem like dumb phones are a product of the past, they've actually remained prevalent around the world and still make up about a quarter of phones actively being used. And yes, this is in large part due to their affordability in developing countries, but it's also becoming a movement among younger generations.
So it's been an official week on this guy, the crappy dumb phone, and I'm never going back to a smartphone.
We're going to be talking about my dumb phone.
Today we're going to talk about the Light Phone 2. It's been 3 years since I've had this device.
I had been thinking about getting a dumb phone or a flip phone for a while, but then I kind of involuntarily adopted one. My iPhone broke and I loved it so much, I decided to keep it.
Despite this, smartphones are still king. Even in developing nations where flip phones are still widely used, smartphone usage is growing.
Developing countries are definitely some of the places where Nokia has, not just as a brand, but also with both feature phones and also smartphones, has a very, very strong presence.
Worldwide, the feature phone market is expected to decrease by about 10% over the next 5 or so years, largely attributed to developing countries making the switch to smartphones. And older generations refusing to use smartphones could be phasing out, as there was a 48% increase in smartphone ownership among those 65 and up from 2012 to 2021. But the amount of dumb phones being used by young people in Western countries is growing. CNBC wanted to explore what the dumb phone trend is all about and see if it can compete with the massive smartphone industry.